Charles, you mentioned earlier the importance of changing the way we deliver learning or produce our resources. So it's a perfect time now for you to step forward and grab the microphone for 60 seconds. How is the role of the learning designer changing?
Well, clearly it is changing and has to change, given that we're moving away from just a course to resources. My view is that the role of the learning designer needs to be and include stimulating the need to learn, stimulating thinking. If you think of a good documentary, it doesn't necessarily, a TV documentary, it doesn't give you loads of facts, but it fills you with wonder, and therefore a desire to go out and learn more. But then some direction as to how to use resources that may be available, so navigation of resources, and then also a clarity about where you are going, so what's expected. In an organisation, that's important. What's the goal? So it could be that a learning designer spends a lot more energy in getting a really rigorous and comprehensive assessment that shows whether people have achieved what they're setting out to achieve. Finally, though, I think the key thing is respect the learner.
Right.
Don't waste the learner's time. It's the responsibility of the learning designer to facilitate that learning as efficiently as possible.
And bizarrely, talking about schools, I was having dinner last night with Edward de Bono and some other people from the conference. We all had this conversation about how so much time is wasted in schools. That's our model that we're using, but actually in schools, unfortunately, we're spending a lot of time simply teachers spend a lot of time being sheepdogs, getting people to do things, rather than doing what you just talked about. Is there a handy mnemonic to those 5 steps you went through there, Charles? No.
They sort of begin with S and D. No, I'll work on it.
Work on it, because it could be snappy to be remembered. I liked it. Panel, do we have any response to Charles on his thoughts about this?
I think the piece about respecting the learner is really, really important. I think when people start out in their careers as learning designers, and certainly being perfectly honest, we've all been guilty of is doing what we want to do rather than thinking about the learner. And I think that's true not just of the learning designer, but I think of the L&D professional as a whole. I think too often we think about ourselves and actually what we think makes good learning and good content rather than actually our end audience. And I think we'll see more of a shift to bringing the learner into the design process to create better content.
Yeah, I think the respect the learner is a great point. Rose, anything?
Absolutely, and I think it's interesting that you drew the parallel with schools, because I think there is a parallel here. What people need to be able to do, both to be effective in the workplace and to be effective learners, is to understand how they pull together multiple different resources to increase their understanding. So it is about respecting the learner and helping that learner to be more effective as an autonomous learner in doing that. So it is quite a different role, I think, for the learning designer as we evolve into crowd.
I think there's a massive gap. What you said there's a massive gap in what we do as a profession typically, which is a core piece that we just typically don't touch on at all, which is helping people be better learners. Very straightforward. How do you learn? And as learning development professionals, that should be at the core of what we do. It isn't. We babble on about needing a learning culture. That's at the organisational level, at the individual level, which we work with individuals to help them learn better. But that's enough from me. Grab your handsets. What do you think? How is the role of the learning designer changing? It isn't. The same principles apply. Maybe. What do you think? You've got 8 quite long answers there. Take your time. And actually, can I just have a quick show of hands, because I can't remember the statistic from earlier, how many people here are actually involved directly or quite closely with learning design itself? Okay, so a fair number. All right, thanks. Let's have a look at the results. Ooh. So what we were talking about comes out ahead of the pack, number 7, fostering continuous learning. This idea of shifting the culture of the organisation to one that embraces the idea of learning taking place. Jenny, have you got any sort of longitudinal stats about this?
Well, I think what we've seen over the last 7 years is a general increase in the expectations that organisations have,
Right.
both of the designer and of the technologies that they're using, that those technologies will start to support things like organisational change, greater sharing of best practice and so on. So in terms of stats, every one of our technologies is increasing. Every one of the drivers for using learning technologies is increasing. But perhaps at the top of the list, we've focused on business agility this year,
Right.
and actually looking at how continuous learning fits into making a business more agile, being able to respond faster to the changing environment. I think this is a real pressure now on the learning designer to look at what they're doing in the context of the whole business conditions here. So I'll give you 77% looking to learning technologies to give them answers in this field.